I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the City of Meridian Solid Waste Advisory Commission regular meeting for November 25th, 2019. It is now 4 o'clock, and we will start with roll call. Please indicate if you're present. Mark Nelson, Steve Corey, here. Dave Neal.
Here.
Sean Keating.
Here.
Megan Larson.
Here.
Scott Walters.
Here.
Robert Wiley.
Here.
And we will move on to the ex officio members, Councilwoman Genesis Milan
Here.
and Rochelle Klein.
Be here.
Quorum being present, we will go ahead and move on to the business. First is approval of the agenda. A copy should have been placed on your desk, and hopefully you had a chance to look at it when it was emailed out earlier. Are there any comments on the agenda?
Mr. Chair, move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved as written. Is there further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of approving the agenda as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the October 23rd meeting. Are there any comments on the draft?
Mr. Chair, move to approve the minutes for October 23rd as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the draft minutes for the October 22nd meeting be approved as written. Is there further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of approving the draft minutes as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion passes. Thank you very much. We then move on to community acknowledgements, and I do have the pleasure of, well, first and foremost, I need to thank Scott for filling in for me last month and for running the meeting so efficiently. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I then want to go ahead and acknowledge we have a guest today. Isabel Kaw is over here, and she has been identified as the MIAC member for the commission. She is on the agenda tomorrow evening for the council to go ahead and consider her for this position. I'm sure that that will go very smoothly, and we'll have her up here on our side of the podium in coming meetings.
Great. Yay.
Thank you for coming, and like I said, if any of this procedural stuff causes any questions, please feel free to ask Tom and me after the meeting about what we did. With that, we'll move on to program reports. And the item under there, 6A, is the SWAC annual report. A draft copy has been provided to you, and a written copy is present at your desk. Are there any comments on the draft? Members of the commission, are there any comments or motions in relationship to the draft report?
Mr. Chair, I think the report is well-written and comprehensive. I would move to approve it as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the report as drafted. Further comments? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote, all those in favor of approving the draft report as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion passes. Thank you, and particularly thank you to Tom for drafting this and getting it before us. We really appreciate the work you do for us. We then move on to action items. 7A, old business. Number 1 is the Ada County landfill cost of services study. I will start with a report. The cost of services study and an endpoint of a rate structure for the landfill is an ongoing process at this point. Last week, a week ago today, there was a meeting of the County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And just to kind of catch up as to where we're at this point, from the county standpoint, the stated goal is to have one flat rate for all disposal at the landfill. It appears that that rate will be around $29 per ton, unless there is some consideration of some remaining policy issues. Identified policy issues of Meridian have included items such as certain components leading up to the $29 and the $29 itself are rounded to get to those values. And, we've questioned whether we should be using the calculated cost per ton for all those parts. There's the use of a 1.5% as a return on investment for funds that are kept for closure and for capital. And a third item is that, and this one is certainly resolved, while the report indicates that landfill gas revenues would not be included in the calculation of the rate. The tool that was created for the spreadsheet used a level $250,000 a year for revenues from the landfill gas. While there's some indication that that number may be conservative, at least a number is present in the spreadsheet. There's an inclusion of $3 million for the purchase of some landfill gas generating equipment, though the report indicates that that would not be the best use of county funds, that contracting out the generation would be more appropriate. There's another item as far as donated free services, free disposal costs for street sweeping, which is in the draft version of all this, which we're asking for some clarification on. And the study takes into account no benefits or costs in association with transfer stations or any impacts on air sheds. And so where we're at right now for Meridian is of course, we recommend that they adjust for these items, which likely would result in a lower cost of service. And also that all customers, including any current and existing disposal contracts, be moved to the new rate structure, and the actual fee, once a rate option is adopted by the county. And finally, that multiple rate options along with the proposed flat rate be considered, that these options should include a rate schedule by material class reflecting the impacts of each material stream on the landfill life, and operations, and a rate schedule by customer class, reflecting the customer class impact on landfill life and operations be considered. To that extent, the county has asked for 2 items. One of them is a proposed rate structure. Second one being a list of possible diversion activities to reduce the amount of material going up to the landfill. And they've requested that that be submitted to the county commissioners by December 9th. Tom is dutifully working on the portion for diversion activities, and I am working on a draft for the rate structure. And certainly, I think both of us would love to have any input that any of the commissioners may have on either of those 2 activities. And with that, first I'll ask Tom, is there anything that I have overlooked?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple minor things. The county SWAC voted to adopt the rate model used, but voted to adopt the report with the modifications requested made to it on just a few numbers. So the report is still outstanding and has not yet been adopted by county SWAC. Other than that, I think you nailed it.
Thank you. Members of the commission, do you have any questions or comments on the report that you've received?
Mr. Chair, the list of diversion activities that the commission would like to see by December 9th, what is the goal for them for that? Is that for consideration in the future for rate adjustments, or what type of document would this be?
I am thinking, well, Tom, do you want to go ahead and start on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That wasn't necessarily clear by the county when it was requested. Initially, the idea was posited actually by Meridian as to whether or not the county was looking to have a county pushed diversion, and they were unsure. So one of the things that Commissioner Lasciando asked for was just some diversion ideas for the county to assess, just in looking at what programs they could adopt moving forward.
So, Mr. Chair, Tom, to make sure I understand, they're not looking for what Meridian is currently doing, but what the county could do for diversion?
That was my understanding, yes.
Mine also. And I think to frame that, Commissioner Lasciando has expressed a concern that if, as a result of this, the fee charged for receipt of waste at the landfill were less than it is today, which I don't know if that would be what would actually occur, but should it be, her major concern is that the result not be that we're encouraging people to throw more stuff away. And in the counterpoint to that, then I believe it would be the commissioner's desire to implement programs that extend the life of the landfill and go ahead and divert waste. And we have expressed to the county summary of the results from our survey, which is that the citizens, the ratepayers of Meridian have indicated that there's a little bit of latitude, perhaps a bit more money could be paid, $1 or so a month per household, to give more opportunities to divert waste, and possibly $1 or so more per household for waste removal activities, specifically in the case that it be to give more services or keep the services that we've got. So in light of any discussion about rates, the ratepayers have made it clear that any additional rate needs to be tied specifically to more service. Additional questions or comments? As always, Tom and I are very appreciative of any comments that you send in. Feel free to email us or call us. And with that, we will go ahead and move on to the next item, 7A2, MIAC recycling signage. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you may remember, we got some direction from the commission at our previous meeting on what kind of signage they would like to see on the MIAC recycling cans that were placed in the downtown corridor right nearby. Staff took that information to MIAC. We had a discussion about what that signage would look like. MIAC came back and have requested staff help in finding suitable designs. They've had a little bit of difficulty in finding that, so staff will be assisting in finding those signs and procuring pricing information to bring back to the commission for discussion.
Members of the commission, any questions or comments on the report Tom's just provided? Tom, keep us informed.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a new business item, 7B1. And this is in regards to some questions that we as commissioners have expressed on the recycling, state of the recycling industry and some options that we are curious about. And Western Recycling in particular, well, Western Recycling has graciously said that they would be happy to come here and go ahead and talk to us about the about recycling. Rick Gilhand is here from Western Recycling. If you'd come on up here, we definitely appreciate you giving us your time to go ahead and talk about the industry.
My pleasure. I appreciate you guys having me here. I've been working in the recycling business for 40 years now, and if somebody would have told me we would have had the problems we've had over the last few years, I would have never believed them. It's unprecedented. I didn't think we would ever get to this point, but with China putting the banner up and banning stuff into the country, that kind of sent everything into a tailspin, which we're still in today. And I like to be optimistic, but honestly, I think we got a lot of rough waters ahead of us still. I hope I'm wrong about that. We do see some good things happening out in the marketplace as far as new capacity coming online, and particularly in the northwest area. There is going to be a mill going in Wallula that's going to consume 1,000 tons a day of OCC, and that's expected to come online in the fourth quarter of next year. We have some new capacity coming online in Port Angeles, Washington. That's happening as we speak and should be up and running at this point in time, and they'll consume cardboard at that mill. There's a Port Townsend mill that is going to put in additional equipment to expand their capacity. That's supposed to be coming online next year. As far as the market grades that we produce out of the sort facility, one of the main ones is the mixed paper grade. And we were fortunate enough, because traditionally that's always been an export item. We were fortunate enough to get selected by a domestic mill to ship mixed paper into them so we can have it consumed domestically. And it's saving the program about $32 a ton versus going into the export market, so it's pretty significant. And we're going to continue to try to increase those allocations as we move forward. And, you know, that's some of the good things that are happening in the marketplace. But all of this stuff takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And unfortunately, as an industry, we dropped the ball, honestly. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You know, we got too reliant on the export markets. We got way too reliant on China as an outlet, and it really came back to bite us. And so, at any rate, as far as operationally at our facility, we still process about 3,500 tons a month of material, and that material comes out of Canyon County, Ada County, Twin Falls, Pocatello, Idaho Falls, and Rexburg. So we currently run 5 10-hour shifts and process approximately 170 tons a day of material. And that would be a combination of aluminum cans, tin cans, plastics, paper, and cardboard. So at our operation, we have usually 20, we have our sort line staffed with 25 people that are sorting the material. We have some mechanical sorting that takes place, as well as some manual sorting. At the end of the day, there's a lot of hands involved, and I just don't know that we'll ever get away from that. But you know, I know that there's been some talk about some additional equipment, some other types of equipment, which would include optical sorters as well as robotics. That is being implemented at a lot of facilities across the U.S. right now. I wouldn't say it's a relatively new technology, but it is a technology that is advancing very rapidly and is getting better and better all the time. And we have gotten bids on, you know, looking at some of that type of equipment to hopefully clean up our material a little cleaner than what we're currently getting it. And, you know, the cost of the equipment is pretty significant, and it would increase our tip fee significantly too if we went ahead and did it. Now, the equipment that we have in our facility we're coming up on 6 years old now. I don't know what the life cycle of it's going to be, but I got to think that we're probably getting on the downhill side of that life cycle. And in order to put in the new optical sorters, it's going to be pretty invasive. And as far as the modifications that we're going to have to make to the existing system. So, and honestly, the buyers that we sell to think our material is cleaner than the stuff that's coming out of facilities that have optical sorters. And I don't disagree with them. I mean, our stuff is in almost 6 years of sorting material and putting it into the marketplace. We've never ever had a rejection. We've never had a downgrade. All of our material that we have shipped has been accepted. So, but there are things out there that I would like to have, absolutely, absolutely. But, and the other thing that I might mention too is, you know, with our labor pool that we have, that payroll alone for just the sorters is about $120,000 a month. And that's money that goes back into the communities here. And can we replace some of those people with technology? Probably can. But I will say this, a lot of the people that we have staffing on our sort line, I consider them at-risk individuals. If they weren't doing that, they probably wouldn't be doing something that would be any better for the communities. So, so at any rate, having said all of that, currently contamination rate that we landfill is about 400 tons a month, or about 12%. And just to put that into perspective, one of the route trucks that Republic brings into us usually is going to have a full load of 3 to 4 tons. So 100 truckloads goes to the landfill every month. It's staggering. You know, 100 of those trucks goes to the landfill. And then that's not to mention you just got to understand that when we get this stuff in and it's all commingled together, when you're sorting it, there's collateral damage. You're never going to get it completely clean. You're going to have some paper in your containers. You're going to have some containers in your paper. The biggest contaminant that we have is plastic bags, in particular grocery bags. They absolutely kill us. And that accounts for about 70% of our residuals that we end up landfilling. It's a very significant amount. And then the material that we ship out is going to have probably another 3% contamination in it. And anybody that you talk to that's in the MRF business, 100% of the time, if you ask them what they would like to eliminate, it'll be plastic film. It drives everybody absolutely crazy. So as far as costing on the optical sorters, we've looked at and have bids and drawings on putting an optical sorter on our paper line to clean that up. And then we've also priced out putting another screen in line to, again, help clean the material up. It is going to save us some labor, there's no doubt about that, but it's not going to be a huge amount. And like I say, it's going to increase the tip fee about 10 to 12 bucks a ton, depending on how much the installation's going to cost. And we're trying to get those numbers dialed in a little bit tighter as far as, because number one, you got the equipment, and then you got to do the retrofit, and how invasive is that going to be? How much is electrical hookups going to cost? And how much money are we going to ultimately save at the end of the day in labor? And again, those are all things, all balls that are in the air, and we are going to continue to take looks at that type of stuff. One of the hesitations that I have right now is because this technology is changing so rapidly, is the stuff that's available today may not look very good fit a year from now. So we're kind of biding our time to see what kind of technologies are going to be coming online, and there are some things out there with the robotics that are, I think, going to be pretty neat. And so the robotics have been around for quite a few years now, but you know, the technology is getting more advanced with them. So we're definitely don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves with you know, going out and purchasing something now and then wishing we would have waited another year. So, but I don't know, do you guys have any questions for me?
Members of the commission, first off, thank you, Rick, for giving us that information. And again, members of the commission, do you have any questions of Rick?
I have a comment. There are two new commissioners here, and unfortunately, neither one of us got to visit your site. I'd like to arrange a time to go out there and see your operation. Secondly, has there been any effort to explore what others are doing on farther down the line sorting, having citizens sort and delivering the material?
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah, that's much
Okay.
better.
I'm wondering, I used to live in California, and we sorted glass, plastic, and aluminum into separate containers and made them available to the recycling program. That effort seems to me like it would be a significant improvement in the commingled way of doing things.
Yeah, and they call that a dual stream program, where you put containers in one cart, and then you put your paper and cardboard in another one, and they're picked up separately. So it does make for a lot cleaner product, but again, you got two carts and you got two trucks now that are going to have to be utilized for that collection process. So a lot of communities have been migrating back to that collection technology, as opposed to the single stream recycling, and there's even some that are going back to source separated recycling at the curb. But it's just, the source separated programs always worked really well. The quality of the materials was very good, but it was very labor intensive to do the collection part of it, as opposed to the single stream programs that proliferated during the last 20 years. So I guess it's just one of those deals where, we're certainly, I think, have our finger on the pulse as far as what's taking place out in communities around the United States and even offshore, because there's a lot of thought and energy going into this recycling programs to keep them abreast of what technology is available out there, and what's the most affordable and cost-effective ways to collect the material, sort the facility, and then get it to market. So
Members of the commission, do you have any further questions or comments?
Mr.
Dave?
Chairman. And again, Rick, thank you for your presentation. You actually answered a couple of questions that I'd written down. So unfortunately, I won't be recorded quite as long as I thought it would be. In your explanation just now on the source separation versus the commingled, I do know when the commingled went in that the amount of waste per household, or the amount of recyclables per household, almost doubled with the commingled, and so there's a big benefit to that. People are typically, if it's easier to do, they'll do it, and I know you've ended up with more contamination with commingled versus the source separated, but you've ended up with a lot more material that's being recycled too. One of the questions that I have, though, is regarding the orange bags. A bunch of communities jumped into the orange bag program in the last couple of years, and one question, are the orange bags still being shipped to the same facility that they originally were in Utah, the place that was creating the diesel-like fuel?
there was originally some materials that was shipped to Renewlogy. My understanding was that they had a difficult time with that material because of the plastic films. Their grinder wasn't very happy about plastic film, and so they were putting in new equipment to accommodate the plastic films. And in the meantime, we have shipped loads. We haven't shipped loads, but Dow has shipped loads to various locations for basically waste to energy at cement kilns and things of that nature. Most of the stuff that has gone out, I really don't know where it's going, because that was part of our deal at the front end of this program. I was very skeptical about having just one outlet for materials. In our business, you don't do that. And as it turned out, I told the Boise City at the time and Dow and everybody else, I mean, we don't mind participating in this orange bag program, and our participation will be, we will pull the bags off, we will bail them up, and then I want nothing to do with it. So, and that's the way we have operated on it since it originally started.
So Rick, some of the material has actually been sent out to be incinerated then?
Well, I don't know, you know what, I'm not sure how they use it as cement kiln, whether it's a replacement for fossil fuels or whether they're just chip burning it and generating heat for their cement process, I don't know. So,
But I know the Renewology facility, the problem that they were experiencing is over a year old now, isn't it? Isn't that about when it?
it is, my understanding is that they have gotten a loan from Dow Chemical to put in the proper equipment so that they can come back online, and that is supposed to happen sometime in the first quarter of this year, or next year, I should say.
And I know it wasn't, I know Western Recycling is you're in between. You're the one that gets the material and has to ship it out. So you weren't the advertiser of the process, but I know it's basically the real thing that sold an awful lot of people on it was take this material and turn it into fuel, diesel-like fuel. And anyway, I know that there have been problems with Renewology, with them being able to process it. I'm not sure they're processing any. I just don't know. But probably none that from here has gone down there for the last year or so.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact time frame of it, but I know here for the last, probably the last year, it's gone elsewhere. So,
Okay, thank you, Rick.
yep.
Rick, a question that I've fielded a few times in the last number of months is whether Western Recycling is ending up having an extensive amount of baled orange bags staying on property. I guess if you could speak to the current situation over there as far as what's on your property, I think there are questions about that up here too.
We've had anywhere from one load on the property to 8 loads. Just kind of ebbed and flowed over time. Sometimes they, get somebody to take 2 or 3, 4 loads at a time, and then we won't see anything then for, another series. So, but as it stands right now, with what they've moved out in the last month or so, we're probably down to about 1 load on site. So, I'm feeling like we're in pretty good shape.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I could just provide a little bit more of an update from what we had at our meetings with Dow, just to kind of piggyback on what Rick was saying. Dow has told us that material has gone to several different places, some waste-to-energy facilities, some prospective markets. Dow has been working very hard to identify new, higher-use markets for the material, so they've sent some truckloads to different prospective vendors to see if they could use the material for higher purposing plastic, repurposing the plastic, really anything else with it. They have, as Rick stated, they've been working with Renewology to make the investment in the new equipment, the new grinder and other equipment to make sure they could process the plastic film and use it. They've got a bit of material that is still at Renewology ready to go when the line is brought up, and as Rick said, that's looking to be about the first quarter of next year. We have gotten some information on Dow, so if there are any questions, we can point people in the direction of Dow's point person who can answer those questions for them. But we do know that Dow is working to find additional markets so they have more outlets than just Renewology. So the plastic is still turned into higher purpose plastic, and they have been updating us as they've found newer avenues or as things have changed. So if there are any additional questions, I do have the information that I can get to the commission or others with Dow's contact information, and they can update you further on what they're doing.
Members of the commission, I would is that information that the commissioners would like to receive at some time?
Mr. Chair, very much so.
Tom, please do go ahead and pull that together. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? I have a question.
Councilwoman.
You mentioned that the film being the #1 contaminant in the recycling stream. Have you noticed a change or a decrease in that since we've started the orange bag program? Are more people putting it in the orange bags as opposed to just throwing it their recycling? Has that helped a little bit?
That's exactly what I was hoping was going to happen, but no, it has not. Residuals are running about the same today as they were prior to the onset of the program. Although there are a lot of plastic, I think it drew a lot more people into the program. So we're seeing a lot of plastic film going in the recycling containers in the orange bag, but about the same number of them that aren't in an orange bag.
So the offenders never switch to the orange bag?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So more questions on the film. So is it like the bags that you get your groceries in, or is it people put their recycling in a plastic bag when they throw it away?
The biggest
both?
culprit is grocery bags,
Grocery bags.
the plastic grocery bags. Although we do see a lot of just random plastic films too, shrink wrap and bubble wrap and, those types of things. And it's just, it's just one of those items that it's a rogue material. It goes everywhere because it has no real characteristics that it can be identified by. So we'll get plastic film in our paper, we'll get plastic film in our containers, and it just kind of goes everywhere on the sort line.
Rick, do you have any feeling for how much of that film is coming from the route trucks? And is some of it coming from commercial sources or
It's primarily residential.
residential?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the vast majority of it is. So, and I think Republic does a pretty good job on their commercial routes with identifying customers that are putting plastic film or any contaminants in their commercial bins. Because those are a little easier to police because the containers, if it's a front load truck, it's right in front of the driver. If it's a rear load truck, the drivers are actually out dumping the stuff into the hopper on the truck. So they can visually see, who's being naughty and who's being not.
Members of the, yes,
Mr.
go
Chair,
ahead.
You made reference to if, there were a few things that you would like to do. And I'm assuming you're referring to equipment investments or,
I'm sorry.
sorry. You mentioned in your comments that there were some things that you would like to do. And I assume you're referring to investments in equipment, possibly other things. Could you just expand on that a little bit if you could?
There is, yeah. Some of the stuff, like I mentioned earlier, we're probably getting out to the end of our life cycle on our existing equipment, and we're probably going to have to start replacing that equipment. And when I say start replacing the equipment, that's going to mean a full tear down and take out and just start over again type of a deal. All of these sort facilities, the lines in them are pretty much all custom built to be housed in a certain size building with certain components in each one of them. There's no cookie cutter equipment you can go out and just buy. It's all custom designed and made. So to go in and start doing modifications and try to retrofit, it's just going to be a little cumbersome to do that. And our thinking is that we probably, when we get to that point, we're probably just going to want to start over again and go from the ground up. So, and even with the, the optics, we've got the retrofit designed and drawn and everything, but we got to figure out what we're going to do with material while we're doing that retrofit, because they're thinking it's probably going to be a 6 to 8 week window in order to retrofit. And I don't know what we're going to do with material during that time, and that is one of the concerns, I guess, now that we have the orange bags in our material. Otherwise, I would say we'll just bail it and ship it to another MRF and have them sort it. But I don't know whether that's possible with the orange bags in it.
And just to make sure we're clear on that, that's if there's a certain piece of equipment, such as an optical sorter that you're putting in, that's what you're identifying. There would be a 6 to 8 week time period for installation of it and bringing it online. Did you want to speak to how much downtime there might be if you had to do more of a replacement because equipment had come to its end of life?
If we come to end of life and we have to do a full tear down and take out and reinstall, it's probably gonna be more like a 6-month window. But the good news is there is, at one point in time, there was no additional MRF capacity in the Northwest. I mean, because everybody had to slow their lines down and up their quality, and therefore, there just was no available capacity anywhere that anybody could take extra tons. That has slowly changed over the course of the last year as people have implemented the optical systems into their lines. They're able to run a little bit higher volume of paper, still maintain their quality. But so in that regard, it's good that there is some additional capacity available in the Northwest. So it's not a lot, but I think we could. I think that we could move some stuff into other MRFs if we were down for any extended period of time by just baling it up and shipping it to them. Like I said earlier, the concern is the orange bags, because when we go through that baling process to ship it to an out-of-state MRF, those bags are going to break open, and it's going to be a mess.
Yes, right.
Members of the commission?
Chair, I
Yes,
have one
Megan.
more. Rick, I just want to make sure I understand the figures that you provided. So you said that it's about 12% contamination, and then that's sorted out, and then 3% contamination that remains in the material, so kind of what's coming.
That's still in the materials,
Right.
yes.
So what's coming from residents and businesses is roughly 15% contaminated? Is that
That's probably
accurate
about
to
right,
say?
yep.
And then of that total, about 70% of that
Yeah,
is
I mean,
plastic?
Yeah, we can, we know what we're shipping out to the landfill, but what we don't know all the time is how much residuals is in the outbound mixed paper or cardboard or whatever else we're shipping out. So I think we have a pretty good handle on that, but, and, you'll hear residual rates all over the board at different MRF facilities, anywhere from 25% to, we're at 12%, which is really low, I mean, relatively speaking. But, I mean, I could go to 20% tomorrow. But that just means that we're not going to pick the bone as clean as we'd like to. We try not to have anything that isn't a contaminant go into the residual pile. In other words, we try to keep the containers out of there. We try to keep the paper out of there. So we're minimizing the amount of stuff that goes to the landfill. And I don't think that's always the case at some of these facilities.
Just trying to get my head wrapped around the whole discussion, but my takeaway so far is that it seems like the recycle market's in flux, and it's changing faster than anyone could spec out a new process. But how would you'd hate to try to re-educate the public on a new process that has a short lifespan, right? So what can we do to in our education programs that make some difference now rather than wait for the market changes in 18 months or 24 months, or you don't want to make them change too much and find out later you regretted it, right? That's the battle, is educating 100,000.
Make it simple. Make it very direct, make it very simple. I think a lot of times people get too much information in front of them, they get confused. One item, the plastic film, if you could just hammer on that, I mean, it would improve our operations dramatically. Because when we have people pulling off plastic bags, that means they're missing something else. And I mean, we go through literally thousands and thousands of picks a day pulling off plastic bags. And it's just not very good use of resources. And it's a non-program item to begin with, so.
Right. So I'm curious how long plastic bags will be in Meridian to be available? Is there any talk about the marketplace reducing the film bags to take care of that for us?
Nobody's taking MRF film right now. Trex used to take a little bit of it.
No, I was referring more towards the retailers not using the film bags anymore. Is there any
I'll be the first,
traction on that?
I'll lead that parade.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of discussion's out there on that kind of stuff.
But it's, unfortunately in Idaho, there was some legislation passed a few years back that says you can't ban plastic bags community to community. It's got to be either statewide ban or no ban, which was very unfortunate that made it through in the 11th hour.
I guess we can do a little bit more research on this. It would be kind of interesting to have that in our hip pocket to know what retailers are doing. I know Albertson's Marketplace only uses paper bags.
Yeah.
And Fred Meyer's made a major point of it, that they're going to quit having single-use plastic bags soon, probably within this next calendar year. I don't know if that pretends that there's a change in the industry or not.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we could, the brown paper bags, we can recycle those all day long. They create no problems whatsoever for us. And so it's just unfortunate that the plastic bags are, so popular right now. So.
Members of the commission, this is a great opportunity. Yes, Commissioner Neal.
One couple of quick questions, Rick. I know that the prices have fluctuated over the last several years. The things that actually Western Recycling has to pay to get rid of, and some that you did get paid, when you sell that commodity. What are the prices? Kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of what they've been like for the last year, like the material you're paying to get rid of. Are you paying less now? Are you paying more, about the same? And the material that you're getting paid for, are you getting paid more or less or about the same?
It's about the same. Here for the last year or so, we've kind of seen the prices flatline somewhat. They dropped very dramatically at one point in time. They certainly haven't came back up, but at least I think maybe we found a floor is what my hope would be. And the mill's got to understand that they're going to need this material at some point in time, and they're at pricing levels that they're going to risk drying up supply lines. And so I think they need to be very cautious about that, and I think they're beginning to understand that if this thing turns around and prices start going back up and demand for their product increases, it's hard to go out and turn that faucet on and off like that. And particularly in some of the more rural areas where it's gotten very, very expensive for them to keep their programs intact. So I'm hoping anyway that my theory on that is correct, but we'll wait and see.
Additional comments or questions? Well, again, Rick, I really appreciate you making some time for us. There's been a number of questions that have floated around our commission here, and would it be easier, Robert? Would you like us to go ahead and arrange for a tour? Would I lean on Tom to go ahead and arrange for when the tour was put together, or that work for you too?
Whenever I can do it, I'd like to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to come out and take a tour of our facility at some point in time, just to see. A picture's worth 1,000 words. So I would encourage everybody to come on out and do a walk around.
Tom, if you'd work with Sean and Robert to go ahead and find a time that works for them to be able to meet with Western, that would be very appreciated.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I'll set up a doodle poll probably tomorrow morning to get availability for Rick and Mr. Keating and Mr. Wiley.
Very good. Thank you. Rick?
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
And so with that, we now drift over new business item B2, SWAC's recycling roadmap. Tom, can you refresh me on where we're leading with this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, happy to. At our previous meeting, we were looking to establish direction on what particular aspects or avenues of recycling that the SWAC wanted to go over. We've determined that recycling was the direction we wanted to take, but we haven't really gotten into the specifics of where we want to go within recycling. So we were working this meeting to perhaps find more particular direction, or perhaps discussing options of creating a subcommittee or looking at different avenues to approach this topic, such as subcommittees, such as an overall plan, such as finding specifics within that recycle stream to focus on. And given the short amount of meetings we have left, 9, the more specifically targeted we could get, the greater the impact would be on the back end.
Thank you. Commissioners, we've been refreshed on what we were shooting for at this point. And based on the presentation that we've just had, does that kind of elicit any thoughts and recommendations from the commission?
I feel like some of this may have been my fault for bringing this up last month. Is just what do we concentrate on? It was his conversation about films is causes a lot of consternation in the process, and just so what can we? To me, it was what can we change in our communication to the public to improve what we already have? And I think for me, it was dispelling some of the impressions that the public has on what's cheaper or better, or what's really going on. It just seems like there's a lot of people feel so much better about recycling glass, no matter how heavy it is or how expensive it is. But we finally got a source for that. But then we're so surprised that the orange bag program is kind of struggling. So I think in my mind it was, okay, what's out there on the horizon that we should concentrate on that actually is some impact in Meridian, a positive impact, I guess I should say. And that's kind of what I had. If I remember right, what our discussion was last month, it's just we can't do everything, but what are the 2 or 3 things that we should concentrate on?
Mr. Chair.
Tom?
Commissioner Nelson, one of the things we could look at doing if we want to look at topics on the horizon or more options that are available to us would be to perhaps look at going back to something SWAC has worked on in the past and actually creating the framework of a solid waste plan for the city, which we could work on as a subcommittee or the group, at the discretion of SWAC, and then we could take that information to council when we think the framework is established and determine if council feels that that is the direction that the city would like to go. If we do go that avenue of perhaps subcommittee, we can elicit that public feedback and really use the survey and more recent feedback that we're getting to determine what is the best way to go and what are the citizens of Meridian looking to get out of the program. And within that program itself, we could have things like future state goals for what our issues are. We could prioritize the issues we want to solve. We could hit that public education and outreach piece by having specific goals within the plan for that. We could, if we created the framework of a plan, we could have a lot more targeted approach that could cover the commission for the next 1 to 5 years or even further out, depending on how in-depth into a plan the commission determined to go.
if we establish goals or objectives that are universal for all the different products we may want to recycle, then we can develop systems or at least targets of the way in which we want to approach it. Being new here, I don't see an organized approach. Okay? If we had a roadmap of the things that we'd like to get by objectives, then we can be more specific.
Commissioners, any comments to add to the conversation that we've had so far? For my own part, obviously, because of my background as a plant engineer, it's very important for me to go ahead and have a process or system on how we're addressing things. I have felt in the past when we came very close to going towards a plan or an item, looking at a couple of sheets that are in the strategic plan for the city, that one of the pieces that we were missing was an implementation group. Basically, we were limited by how much we were in a position as a commission to volunteer to be able to implement a plan if one was put together. And so we kind of backed away from that. But thank you, Tom. I do believe that we now have that as something where we may be able to pursue to. And I think having a goal would go ahead and help us extensively on figuring out what exactly we want to do, to go ahead and also to identify what kind of way we want to improve the waste collection and or recycling opportunities in the city. I certainly know I'd be very supportive if that's where the commission were to choose to go, that we could definitely put one together. Commissioners, comments?
Mr. Chair, I also very supportive of a plan with a goal that we can measure how we're doing, absolutely, and a specific focus. I think, 1 or 2 items per year that we can specifically focus on and something that we can measure how we're doing, and I'm all in favor of that, and I'd be happy to participate in that process.
Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. We would be happy to bring sample materials from other areas too, like if we decide to put together, a task force or a group to look at what the plan would entail and implementation and goals to measure. We have samples from all around the country of outreach materials that work or don't work or things that other people have tried, and we can always run routes and bring recyclables back to the transfer station and do independent audits by route and kind of look at areas that are more problematic. So, we are happy to get really involved and really work hard to clean up the curbside stuff. The commercial stuff is a little bit easier for us to clean up. As a company, we can really see, you have one customer 3 yards versus a whole bunch with little carts. It's just easier to target the commercial sector, but we're happy to support that plan and implementation in any way possible.
Thank you, Rochelle. The support of Republic Services on getting this accomplished would be very valuable. Commissioners, it certainly would be appropriate to discuss some options on how to do this. We certainly are in a position to go ahead and rely on our overworked staff member to go ahead and put together a draft plan for us to consider and work from there, or if there are members that are excited about this opportunity, we could certainly form a subcommittee to go ahead and draft that plan. There's a couple of ways that this could be attacked. So comments from the commissioners on.
I would think the initial thing would be to have Tom set some broad goals, okay, with getting input from the commissioners. Set some broad goals. Then if we get that, at that point, if we agree with those goals, we can have a subcommittee that would take it to the next level of specificity.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we have a subcommittee to help Tom develop those type of ideas. I'd be happy to nominate Mark.
I knew that was coming. We have a-
Chair, I concur with Commissioner Walters and Mark's volunteering. I'd be happy to participate as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, that it wouldn't be really fair to staff to read our minds first before we give them feedback. So I would entertain participating in that subcommittee, and maybe if Republic or staff could at least give some reference materials just to get us thinking, and then we could start. If there's something out there, don't want to spend too much time, but if there's some level of detail or what a framework might look like to help us lay folks kind of get started, I'd appreciate it. And then maybe we can start bouncing around some ideas in email, and then eventually get together as with Tom as a subcommittee.
Mr. Chair,
Tom?
staff have several different examples of existing solid waste plans from other areas, both county and city, so we can see from different levels what other cities have done. Boise, Portland metro area, Deschutes County, Spokane, Washington. We've got several different ones that we can actually share with the selected members of the subcommittee to avoid quorum issues, of course, but get that information out there.
Thank you. Am I accidentally becoming a point of contact?
Yes.
Thanks, Scott.
Commissioner, that's no accident.
The chair would appreciate a motion. Forming a subcommittee, to form a subcommittee.
I'm thinking here.
Yeah, 4.
I'm doodling.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just a quick question for Mr. Neri. What would our size limitation on the subcommittee be?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so as long as it didn't exceed the quorum of the commission, so I think you have 7 members now, so no more than 4. But 4 can get a little unwieldy to try to coordinate schedules, but.
And I guess,
So-
so if we have 3, then it would be, but if we have 4 or more, then it
Yeah,
becomes needing a public meeting, and it will need to be noticed and all that
Correct.
other stuff.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can I just throw something in there? So after tomorrow, there'll be 8 members, which means you should be able to have 4 without a quorum, as long as you don't meet, the 4 don't meet before tomorrow evening. 4 should be appropriate, right, Bill?
Point taken.
Well, isn't there 7 now?
There's 7 today.
Right, so 4 is a quorum.
Tomorrow, is it half plus 1 would be a quorum, right? So if there's 8 tomorrow, there will be 8.
Right, then the quorum will be 5.
Right.
Right.
So you can have 4 on the subcommittee safely after tomorrow.
Yes.
So-
It is a little unwieldy to try to
Right.
coordinate that many schedules, though.
I heard
that's the
legal but
practical
not
side of that.
recommended.
Sure, but legally.
Legally, you would have less than a quorum.
Mr.
So
Mr.
again, motion along the lines of forming a subcommittee, and if appropriate, to identify how many commissioners and up to how many commissioners in that subcommittee.
Mr. Chair, permit me to interrupt just very quickly. Just one more question for Mr. Neri. With the quorum question, would that include ex officio members if we were to have Rochelle as part of the subcommittee, given her expertise in the field?
It does not.
Prove nothing.
We call this a roadmap.
We're
Okay.
support like you already. Different however the chairman does it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we work with staff to collect information related to reference material for a recycling roadmap and to form a subcommittee to support that effort.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to form a committee to work with staff to develop a recycling roadmap. Is there further comments on that motion?
Mr. Chair, just one very quick comment. I think it would behoove the commission to not limit themselves strictly to recycling. If we develop an overall solid waste program, it could include additional further diversion programs, so we could have our goals for diversion, which would also look at our total intake of just trash solid waste as well. So it may be limiting to just have recycling. We might want to look at a solid waste program instead.
I'm willing to concede that.
Sounds like we have mission creep right off the bat. I would amend that motion to not limit us to recycling only, but to include the full solid waste cycle.
I heard the maker of the motion and the second go ahead and say that they would accept that change to the motion. So we'll accept that. Let's see, it's to form a subcommittee to go ahead and assist Tom in developing a roadmap for improvements to waste collection and recycling. Further comments by commissioners? Sensing the commission is ready for a vote. All those in favor of forming a subcommittee signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Okay, almost in a volunteer fashion, Mark and Megan have said that they want to be on the, okay, and Scott. Any suggestions on logistics on this? I think there are other, well, let's see. So shall we say the subcommittee is Meg, Mark, and Scott, and then,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Just a thought. I mean, they could start, I doubt they'll be meeting that many times in December. And then maybe at your next meeting, you can see if there's one additional person that is really excited about participating. In case somebody wants to jump on at that point when you will have an 8-member commission.
Does that sound?
I don't know. That's just an idea. You don't have to take it. I'm just looking over here. I'm seeing some,
Yeah.
you know, there might be, you may have some somebody else who may really want to, maybe not.
Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to step aside if there are very eager participants as well. So.
No.
That seems reasonable, because I think if we can just give it a couple weeks and then to collect up some information and maybe get some emails out. Then after our first meeting or two, then we can probably provide more insight at our next meeting as to where we think we should be.
Mr. Chair?
Tom?
I think it might be a good idea, especially since it won't have any effect on quorum issues if we include ex officio member Klein. I think her ability to obtain resources from other places where they've done this successfully, and just as a good subject matter expert, it would behoove us to have her on the committee as well.
I agree.
I agree.
Tom, please proceed that way. Okay, so executive privilege, I guess at this particular point, the subcommittee will be Scott, Mark, and Meg to assist Tom in developing this with the expectation that we'll pick this up at the next meeting to see if there's adjustments that need to be made. Thank you all. That was kind of I'm glad where we got to.
I promised my wife I'd never volunteer for any more things ever.
You were nominated, I heard.
Oh.
I heard 2 people nominate you. That completes the work that we've got on our agenda. The last item on this is consideration of the need for a December meeting. I don't think there's anything in particular that we have pressing that needs to be done in December. We could wait until the regular meeting in January. And I don't think there's anything that's going to happen on this roadmap that would need to be considered that quickly. But commissioners, if you have a desire to meet in December, I like to be around you guys, so I'd love to meet with you, but I serve at your pleasure. Comments?
Mr. Chair, our regular scheduled meeting is Christmas Day, as I understand it, which does not seem like a good time. So I would be okay with canceling the December meeting.
Agreed.
In fact, I would make a motion that we do cancel the December meeting.
I'm going to take that as the fact that you did make a motion that we cancel the December meeting.
Second.
There is a second. Further comments?
Mr. Chair,
Councilwoman?
that means this will be my last meeting. So, sorry. It's been a wonderful 6 years with you guys.
Thank you.
I personally want to thank you for your help and advice on our committee. You've been very valuable to what we've been doing, and I don't know what your next ventures may be. Certainly hope that they are all as
Exciting, is it?
yes.
I don't know.
But on my behalf, thank you so much for what you've done for us.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And above and beyond that, thank you for your service to the community as being on the council.
Mr. Chair, I have 2 quick comments, if I may. I think it would be nice to put something on the January agenda to acknowledge ex officio member Milam and her departure, because she's been invaluable to my efforts in the short period of time that I have been here. With that said, the normal day for our January meeting would be the 22nd. So would you like me to put you down for that?
It's not necessary.
And to go ahead and break up the questions first, we do need a vote on the canceling of the December meeting. All those in favor of canceling the December meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That motion passes. Is there any issues with January 22nd or being our next regular meeting? You will be out, okay.
Mr. Chair, do you
Megan.
need the January 22nd approved, or that's just the normal fourth Wednesday?
I guess at this particular point, I'm only checking to see if there's anyone that knows they've got an issue on that in case we need to address it. Obviously, November and December have their inherent issues, but January, I would assume nobody's got an issue with a particular date, and particularly January 22nd. So without objection, then we'll go ahead and use our regular date, January 22nd, and
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, clarification, the Wednesday is the 23rd?
oh, 23rd.
No? What? 22nd
22nd?
of 2020?
Oh, sorry, my bad. I don't have.
And so with that, then we've completed our business. Again, I want to thank all of you for your commitment to this commission. It is volunteer time, and it's very much appreciated by the city, what you give the city to go ahead and do things. Please enjoy your holidays, and I look forward to seeing you guys at the next meeting in July, or January. January.
Nice vacation, sir.
Where did that come from? Anyway,
Thinking of warmer weather.
with that, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.